Good afternoon and welcome to this special broadcast. We are all going through some very difficult times, and this is our effort and initiative to take the constructive conversation forward in this special initiative here on CNN News 18. So let me first briefly introduce the parent theme for today, the World Immunization Week, as it is celebrated every year in the last week of April, and it aims to promote the use of vaccines to protect people across age groups against a multitude of diseases. Now, newborns are vulnerable to many serious diseases, and vaccination is a crucial step to protect them against these multiple ailments. But these vaccination sessions are also dreaded by every parent. More than the babies, moms are scared of multiple injection pricks, having to see their child suffer in pain, and sometimes crying all night and multiple visits to a pediatrician. So, is there an option available by which you can reduce the number of pricks and the associated pain to the kids? The answer is yes, with a combination of vaccines. It's true. Now, newborns can be immunized against serious diseases like hepatitis B, HIV, diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, polio with fewer injection shots. A single shot can immunize them against up to 6 diseases in one go. The combination vaccines also help in one time protection and reduce your child's suffering without them having to sit through multiple sessions, fewer injections, lesser associated side effects. That's the plus point. And to throw more light on this, we have today senior pediatricians Dr. Arun Vadva and Dr. Bhaskar Raju. Let me just briefly introduce both the gentlemen who are with us on the broadcast today. So Dr. Arun Vadva, he's a practicing pediatrician in South Delhi since the last 29 years. He has authored chapters in the IAP textbook of FAQs, IAP textbook of vaccinology, and has numerous publications to his names in reputed journals. He has done courses in vaccinology conducted by NFID Washington, Child Health Foundation, EVAC, and IAP. He's been a national trainer at the IAP Practical Vaccinology course and has shared numerous sessions on the subject. Thank you, sir, for joining us on the broadcast. Here's hoping to learn a lot from you today. We also have Dr. Bhaskar Raju. He is a consultant pediatrician and pediatric gastroenterologist based in Chennai. He is the founding member, erstwhile National PEDG Forum, IAP Subchapter PEDGE, the founder member of ISPGHAN. Dr. Raju retired as a professor on pediatrics and pediatric gastroenterology, MMC Chennai, as the HOD Department of PEDGE, Institute of Child Health and Hospital for Children, Chennai. Thank you, Dr. Raju, for joining us on the broadcast. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure having both of you. Let me begin by a question, which is the running theme today, and I'd like to have thoughts from both of you. World Immunization Week 2021, the subject of immunization has never been so relevant with its own set of challenges. Vaccines bringing us closer, becoming more relevant. What are your thoughts, Dr. Bhaskar, if we can begin with you?
Yeah, World Immunization Week, I think it's about a decade almost since WHO declared last week of April as World Immunization Week. It's not that it's only 10 years old. I remember during my days when I was learning pediatrics way back in the 70s, we used to have World Immunization Days. I'm sorry, it was a local immunization day. We had local immunization weeks, and several centers, several cities, several countries had their own version of immunization days and immunization weeks. About 10 years ago, WHO, I think 2012, if I remember right, decided to collate everything together to one single time, the entire world, and almost 180 countries have accepted that concept that the last week of April will be World Immunization Week. The reason is that they are trying, the WHO is trying to bring the attention of the entire world media to immunizations, at least for a week during the entire 365 days. And that's a lot better than each individual doing it at a different time. That each of those weeks come with a tagline. Usually the one is vaccine works. That's what has been the tagline the last few years. Prior to that, are we up to date used to be the theme of World Immunization Weeks. This year it is brings us closer. You can seriously ask me, what is this vaccine works brings us closer? I think time has come where doctors may have to regain the genuine trust and the respect of the patient population they are seeing, the parents they are seeing. This COVID, one of the many negative sides to the COVID there has been a lot of negative reports about vaccinations being unsafe, vaccinations being not effective, but bandied about as being very effective. I think vaccination times are when the pediatrician meets the parents with a non-sick child, a healthy child. That is the point he can bond. That is the point where he can develop enormous trust. And that is also the point where the parents learn to respect what the doctor says and enjoy his confidence. Both of them, it's mutual confidence that generates. I think World Immunization Week, this theme clearly takes you towards that. Use vaccination times to improve the trust of the patients and remove this negative factor from society's perception as much as possible. Thank you.
All right. Dr. Vadva, if I were to bring you in on that point, how to increase the confidence around the vaccination process? Our country, fortunately, in the last years of experience, has shown tremendous faith, whether it was the mass polio vaccination across the country or various other sort of immunization that children need. How is it that we can build this trust further around the vaccination process? Vaccines bringing us closer, as the theme goes.
Yeah, like he said, Dr. Raju was saying, vaccine bringing us together closer. This year I would say even it's better because once you take a COVID vaccine, you can meet your friends, relatives, and come together. Otherwise, you have to stay in your own cocoons. Okay, but what do you mean by the vaccine hesitancy or people not taking the vaccine or being hesitant? Fortunately for us in our country, it's not so bad. If you see the vaccine hesitancy index, we are 2-3 from the bottom. So most of people in our country do normally have faith in vaccines. The European countries, America, the vaccine hesitancy is much more than what we have in our country. France, and they are much ahead of us. And the bottommost, I think, is Bangladesh, and India comes from the second. So that means more people are not hesitant. So this year the hesitancy was seen because it's logical. Even lots of doctors, healthcare professionals were a little hesitant because the vaccines were new, the diseases were new. They think all the vaccines took 10-12 years to make, and how come this vaccine come in 1 year? It's unbaked, partially baked vaccine or something like this. So that's why a little hesitancy was there. But I think now, since so many million people have taken the vaccine, so now the vaccine trust will build up once they see that people who had taken the vaccine, they had fallen sick less often, or if they fell sick, they did not reach the hospital or serious critical state. So it did help them. It did work. So this data will help in building up the confidence.
Dr. Raju, I want to bring you in on this point about how do vaccines work? I think all the apprehensions around vaccines are largely because of the fact that people don't understand the science behind the vaccines, how they are created. For about 200 years, different forms of vaccines have protected humanity. A word from you in terms of the contribution of vaccines for the human race, and how do they work? How do they protect us? If you were to explain it, say to a teenager or a child or lay person who doesn't have a medical background, how will you explain them about this process of vaccination?
Yeah, it's a twofold question. How do vaccines work? And the second part of the question is how helpful has vaccine been to humankind the last decade or so it has been around? How vaccines work? All animals, including human beings, when they are born with an innate capacity to fight anything that gets into their system which shouldn't be there. That is called innate immunity. A classic example is like if you get a wood splinter getting into your finger, within a few days you form a blister and then the body pushes it out. This is a basic immunity everybody is born with. But there is a little more sophisticated immunity which is specifically directed against individual germs, like protection against measles or like protection against polio. These are not present from birth. These have to be acquired, or the body has to adapt to it. And the only way it can acquire or adapt to it is get an infection. The body has to receive the germ inside it. Body has to study the germ. Body has to study its protein structures, and body has to decide what kind of a defense it has to build up. And it does build up the defense over a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. And once it has been built up, it is ingrained into the memory of the immune system. And if 20 years later, the same germ gets into the body, immediately the defenses come up and kill the germ and prevent it from causing disease. This sounds excellent on paper, but please remember, this means you have to go through the infection. So that's a huge price to pay to develop immunity against at least around 40 to 50 viral and bacterial diseases. You have to go through those 40 and 50 infections all over throughout your lifetime by the time you get immunity. All that it does is prevent a second attack. Now,
Right.
what science has done is tricked the body into believing that it has got an infection while it has not got an infection. What it has done is taken the germs, broken them down, or inactivated them, or chosen specific proteins from the surface of the germ. Like in the case of COVID, they use the anti-spike protein and then inject it into the child or give it orally. Now, the child's body thinks it has been infected and then builds up a rapid immunity against this particular virus or bacteria or the protein which you have injected into the child or the child has ingested. And that behaves like natural immunity. But only thing is, when you get a natural infection, very often one infection is adequate. While you are being immunized using modified germs or using broken parts of the germ, you may require 3 doses or 4 doses or 5 doses. This is how you generate immunity against a variety of diseases, somewhere around 25 to 30 different diseases which can easily kill you. You generate immunity and protection without going through the disease, which is the beauty of vaccination. So that answers your first part of the question. The second part of the question, how useful it has been to immunity, to human mankind. Phenomenal. In fact, about a decade ago, one of those international famous magazines, Time, listed human achievements of the last few hundred years. And somewhere at the top is vaccinations. Somewhere near internet. Imagine how much internet means to all of us. Now, many people don't look at vaccines that way. Vaccines are almost as much contributory to human health and human welfare as so many other inventions of humankind.
Absolutely.
If you say about 100 years ago, if 1,000 babies are born in India, less than 700 will see the 5th birthday. Rest of them, due to several causes, including vaccine preventable diseases, would die and go. In my days, way back in the 70s, we used to have something called an isolation ward in the hospital, which was brimming with seriously ill infective children like measles, polio, diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus. It has disappeared. We hardly ever see. There's virtually no hospital now which keeps isolation wards because many of the medical personnel who are getting trained today may not see a case of measles. Polio, we have virtually eradicated from the world. Smallpox, we have eradicated. And if we sustain this way, we may soon eradicate many of the dangerous diseases, including measles, including diphtheria, including whooping cough. So vaccines have had an enormous role to play in humankind's development and evolution.
Right. Dr. Vada, coming to you. In the backdrop of what Dr. Rao just explained us, Dr. Bhaskar Raju just explained us about the importance of vaccines, how do they really work? What are the various important vaccines for the purpose of education of our audience that have been recommended by IAP? You could begin with children between 0 to 1 year, adolescent. What are the various vaccines at these 2 stages which are recommended by the experts?
Yes, Dr. Bhaskar made my job easy. He mentioned quite a few of them. But when we start from the beginning, at birth, these days we give BCG, which is protecting against tuberculosis. We give a 0 dose of polio drops, and then we give them a hepatitis B vaccine. So these 3 are given at birth. And then after that, we give 2 to 3 more doses of hepatitis B. Then we give a combination vaccine of diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus, along with polio, HIV. Then we use influenza vaccine. Then we use measles, mumps, and rubella combination. Earlier we used to separate ones. Now we use a combination. We use typhoid, brain fever, meningitis vaccine. Then we use hepatitis A vaccine, which is another form of jaundice. Hepatitis B is because of blood needle transfusion, and this hepatitis A is oral borne. So anything eaten from outside, water from outside, you can have hepatitis A. Then we have pneumococcal vaccine, which I missed, and then chickenpox vaccine. So all these are given in the first 15 months or so, and after that we have the boosters. And when we go ahead 5 years again, we get a booster of all these, because with time the immunity does go down slightly, and then you get a booster, means it prolongs the immunity for a longer period, for another 5-10 years, or getting the immunity prolonged. And then 10 years, you again get a booster of diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus, so that the immunity is prolonged even further till almost 20 years of age. And in adolescents, we also now give the HPV vaccine, the human papillomavirus vaccine. As of now, we're giving only to girls, but soon it might be there for boys also. And this is given as 2 doses every adolescents. And also all these adolescents who are going abroad or going to stay in hostels or in places where they'll be staying together, we give them a meningitis vaccine again. So, or also some adolescents have missed out on the previous vaccine. Suppose they were ill, or parents were not so aware, or they get transferred to a place where they're not, or some affordability issues there. So we call them as catch-up vaccination. So all these DPT, measles, polio, MMR, chickenpox can be given in adolescents also if they missed out early. But specifically, if you ask me, then the tetanus, diphtheria, whooping cough combination at 10 years, the HPV vaccine for girls and meningococcal vaccine is given in the adolescent age group.
Right, right.
And then we
Dr.
give
Bhaskar
one more
Raju, in
integrated
terms
18 years
of,
old.
sure, please go ahead, please go ahead.
No, I was saying that we give one tetanus, diphtheria, whooping cough at 18 years booster also we give now, so that you get a booster and it works till almost 30 years of age.
All right, all right. Thank you for that addition. Dr. Bhaskar Raju, in adult and elderly, yes, COVID vaccination is the new addition that has come in, but what are the other vaccines which are recommended by IAP if you talk specifically about adult and elderly in our country?
IAP probably doesn't need to talk about adult and elderly, but nevertheless, yes, there are those. The concept of adult vaccination is relatively new, maybe about a decade and a half. The people have started routinely immunizing adults as well. Dr. Wadhwa so beautifully said. But 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when immunizations were started, science and medicine believed that if you complete immunizations by 6 years, you're protected for life. But then when these children were immunized, grew into adults and later into older people, many of the infections against whom they have received vaccines, they attack them, clearly showing that the immunity taken between the ages of 0 and 6 years doesn't protect you lifelong in some cases. Certain diseases like hepatitis B, hepatitis A, chickenpox, it's lifelong immunity. But like Dr. Wadhwa clearly said, for diphtheria, tetanus, whooping cough, and even measles, it may not be permanent and lifelong. You need to take boosters. You need to take boosters not only in your adolescence, but the Tdap, we call that as tetanus. D stands for diphtheria, P stands for pertussis or whooping cough. That has to be taken again at least every 10 to 15 years for you to sustain immunity against particularly whooping cough. Because whooping cough immunity tends to wane off, and it can be a disaster if at 60 or 70 years you'll end up getting whooping cough. The other vaccine which usually is given in older people is flu vaccines, because H1N1 is a major killer for the older generation, especially 75 and above. They can go in for viral pneumonia and subsequently regular bacterial pneumonia. They may not survive. So every year throughout their life, they have to take flu vaccines. One more vaccine, the last decade and a half, they've been advising is pneumococcal vaccine. One of the diseases which kills older people is flu, and the flu can get super infected with pneumococcal pneumonia. Pneumococcal pneumonia is a disastrous disease. We can only prevent it. Curing it is very, very, very difficult because it's antibiotic resistant. So 2 doses of pneumococcal vaccine. Traditionally, 1 imported dose which contains about 13 different strains of the vaccine, and 1 Indian dose which contains about 23 strains of the same pneumococcal germ. That is also used in older people, especially if you are 55 and above, you must take 2 doses. One other vaccine which is available but not in India is herpes zoster vaccine, shingles. It's not fatal, it's not a disastrous disease to have, but it can be a terribly painful disease if you do get it. Elsewhere in the world, especially in the West, a vaccine is available for that too, but if it does come to India, I would recommend all the older generation to take that. So that would be adult vaccinations.
Okay. Dr. Arun, a point from you in terms of the combination vaccines. And how is that really beneficial both for the newborn and their parents? The combination vaccines, how are they working and their benefits, sir?
So combination vaccine is not like mixing 3, 4, 5, 6 different antigens together and making one vial. It's not like this. So they have to be studied whether all these combinations work together or not. So it takes long time to get into a combination, and we know that it's a viable combination. They do not interfere with each other. And lots of combinations have been used earlier, like the diphtheria, whooping cough, tetanus. The DPT has been there for almost 50 years now. MMR has been there for almost 30, 35 years. MMR is measles, mumps, rubella. But now gradually, since more and more diseases have come up and more vaccines are being developed, we all want to have less number of injections covering maximum number of diseases. So if I ask you one question, that do you want 6 different injections or you want 1 injection in one go? I'm sure any sane human being would say, I'll have 1 injection in one go. And the dream project would be to have 1, 2, or 3 injections at birth, and then it's done lifelong. So that would be the dream later on. So lesser the number of injections, more the diseases are there, more and more vaccines are being made. So we have individual vaccines for all these number of diseases. It would be a terrible time for parents because they have to miss the school, they see the child crying, getting vaccinated, number of trips. So all that increases, and the child, poor child, also will get so many injections together. So if you have 5, 6, 8, whatever maximum combination in one shot, it's always better.
All the better if the pain is lesser and the child is also not crying very frequently for the pills. Dr. Bhaskar, which are the diseases against which this combination vaccination right now is available, in the market? And how does the combination vaccination really improve the timeline? Are there also benefits in terms of the timeline? And are there possible side effects also which increase? That's one of the fears that many people actually talk about.
Yeah, I think we'll be touching upon the side effects subsequently also in one of the questions. But before I go into what are the the multivalent vaccines which are available, I would like to add multiple vaccines in one single vial also means logistically much, much, much better. Storage, transport, cost, number of doctor visits goes down, so the consulting fees are also less. With one dose, you can get 6 diseases, otherwise you will be coming back to the doctor 6 times. And of course, timeliness, which you mentioned just now, is another important factor. Imagine between 0 to 6 months, a baby receives 8 different vaccines against 8 different diseases, and 3 doses of each of them. If we were going to give them as individual injections, that is 24 injections within a matter of 6 months, which is almost like walking to the hospital every week and taking an injection. Imagine how uncomfortable that will be. So major reason why timeliness is not maintained and the vaccines get delayed is because there's a bit of a vaccine fatigue. The patients get sick and tired of repeatedly going back to the doctor to take vaccine. So if you're going to bring down that number and say, okay, 3 visits is enough, I'll cover you for 24 diseases, it's very, very likely they will maintain the timeliness. The other side, which you mentioned about what are the vaccines which are available? Dr. Abadwa clearly said there is a hexavalent vaccine. There are 2 imported hexavalent vaccines and 1 Indian vaccine. They are very pricey, I don't deny that, but they protect against 6 different diseases in one go, which is tetanus, diphtheria, whooping cough, Hib. It's a brain fever inducing germ. It protects against polio and it protects against hepatitis B. All 6 of them in one go. There are also pentavalent and quadrivalent vaccines. There are imported, slightly pricier pentavalent and quadrivalent vaccine. They are pricier and imported because they contain IPV. That's a vital component of all these combination vaccines. And that's the most expensive part of the combination vaccines, which is why those which contain IPV are a little pricier. We do have, and one strain infection will not protect against another strain infection. So multiple strains are put into one vial, but the germ is the same, like pneumococcal vaccine, for example. The vaccine can have up to 10 or 13 different strains in one. Similarly, HPV, human papilloma virus vaccine, which is given to prevent cervical cancer, that also has multiple strains. That's another different variety of multivalent vaccines. Thank you.
All right. Bringing in Dr. Vadva into the discussion and talking about, the side effects that I was earlier mentioning, up to 6 vaccine antigens combined into one. Are there chances of increased side effects? That's a question on the mind of many parents.
If you want a simple answer, definitely no. There are no increased chances. If you're giving them separately, then the side effects would have been the same in terms of fever, pain, swelling. But imagine the number of injections. And more the number of injections, more the pain, more the chances of visits, crying, mental torture, you can say, for the child. But these chances of side effects definitely do not increase if you give as a combination. And all that is well studied before the vaccine is brought out to the market.
And Dr. Bhaskar, how will a newborn react to so many antigens given in a single shot? I mean, Dr. Arun Bada is making it absolutely clear that no, these side effects don't increase. But how does the newborn's body really react to so many vaccines or a combined vaccine being given in one go?
See, the term so many, honestly, in my opinion, is oxymoron. I'll tell you why. When a newborn is born, within several hours, it is assaulted by millions of germs, germs from the surrounding, germs from probably the doctor's coat, germs from the mother, germs from the mother's colon, mother's vagina, germs from the mother's milk, which gets into the child. The child is bombarded with millions and millions and millions of germs right from the day it is born. And then once they start eating or drinking milk, trillions of proteins enter into the baby's system every day, the rest of their lives.
No, this is very important that even if the pandemic is on, we have to continue with the vaccination because all these are deadly diseases. Most of the parents haven't seen them, so they don't realize. But if we don't give the vaccine and there's an outbreak of, say, polio or measles or some disease, it will be even worse than the COVID pandemic. So we have to give timely vaccines because all these diseases are prevalent in this age group only. So we can't postpone that, okay,
Right.
I'll give it when it's 5 years, but because these diseases are prevalent in this age group, less than 1 year, 2 years. That's why these vaccines are given at this age. Otherwise, the schedule would have said that give it 5 years. Why give at this age? So you have to give
Right.
it timely, especially the vaccines which are given in the first 15 months. You have to stick to time. After that, when you have 1.5 years booster, 5 years booster, you might delay for a month or so if you surely feel that the pandemic may go by then, which it is not going. But maybe you can say that okay, the peak may go because now in Delhi there is complete lockdown. Obviously, you will not be visiting the clinic. You can delay by a month
Right.
or so. But the primary vaccine series, which completes till 15 months, has to be given on time. Maybe a few days is fine, but not months. Or delay is not allowed.
All right. So a little bit of delay is okay, but not very long. Dr. Bhaskar, in your experience, what are the key reasons or most plausible reasons that you've seen that parents tend to miss the vaccination dates or there is a plausible delay that happens? Dr. Bhaskar.
Yeah, I think today it's obviously the COVID pandemic. In fact, at least a third of my patients are not taking their vaccines in the right time. And in many cases, it's really not a big issue, at least unless it's a huge lockdown where you cannot come out unless you are seriously ill. Other situations, going to a doctor's clinic, coming back is like going to the grocery shop and coming back, going to buy something and coming back, going outside for a walk and coming back. It's really not such a risky endeavor, especially when the pediatricians take adequate care to see to it COVID standard operating procedures are being followed strictly, including hand washing, including cleaning the place, including keeping not more than 2-3 people inside. So COVID presently is the most important reason, and I would like to reassure the parents it is not a big issue. You can take the child for vaccinations. What we find is between 0 to 6, we are able to convince the parents to come and take the vaccine. But as the child grows older and older, the lack of delay becomes really bad. In fact, the second year, 1.5 year booster, the 4-year boosters, the injections that have to be given at adolescence. In fact, for more than a year, many of my patients haven't come and taken. The basic reason being COVID. But there are also other important reasons. There's a small part played by social media. I fully respect your program that you have bothered to take the trouble to tell the positive side of immunization to the public. But what 90% of the social media is negative about immunization. A small group of naysayers literally fill the media with all kinds of stuff which makes people believe maybe vaccines are dangerous. It is the function of media like you to remove that. There are a few very good reasons why a patient may not come. One which I have found is vaccines are a little pricey. Sometimes taking hexavalent vaccine and pneumococcal vaccine and a rotaviral vaccine together may cost quite a bit. And many lower middle class might find it a little tough. So they might stagger the vaccines and take it instead of within 0 to 6 months, maybe within 0 to 1 year. Of course, some children do fall sick, and sickness is another important reason why vaccines may get delayed. These are genuine reasons where the doctor has to adjust and make sure, even if it is delayed, the child does get it.
All right. There are various questions, doctors, that we are getting from the social media handle as well. And Dr. Arun Wadhwa, would you want to comment on this question? One of the parents is asking that stepping out of home with my kid in this scenario is scary. Can the vaccines really be taken? Something that we were recently talking about, that the COVID has become one of the key deterrents why vaccination for children is being delayed. And that's the step that various parents have to take because of the peak that we are witnessing right now. Dr. Wadhwa, to what extent is the delay that a parent can afford? And beyond what time it's not worth the risk?
So that's what we were discussing just now. That little delay is fine, especially for the vaccine which are given in the first 15 months. So little delay would mean 10, 15 days, 20 days once you feel the peak is gone, once the lockdown is over, but do not delay beyond a month or so. Definitely, if you go, obviously the COVID is not going to go for good as of in the next 1 or 2 years. So you have to complete the vaccine. And these days, fortunately, all pediatricians have done this, that they're doing teleconsults for sick children. So the clinics are not brimming with sick children. And you can fix up a time and most of us have also segregated initially. Now, obviously, we are not seeing any sick children, but earlier also, we had fixed times for vaccine children, fixed time for sick children. So take a prior appointment, go at a time when we are seeing only vaccination children, and don't overcrowd the place. You can sit in the car, wait till your turn comes if there are 2-3 other people also. And we have been coordinating that in a way that they sit in their own comfort of the car in a secluded environment. They don't spend more time in the clinic. And whenever they come, they are immediately taken in. Obviously, after all sanitation measures, they are given the vaccine and told that if you have major issue or something which you think will take long, you can go home and call back. We can set up a video call again. But the vaccine cannot be given over a video call. So for that, they have to come. But all these guidelines can be followed so that sick children are not mixed with vaccination children. The areas can be made differently in a hospital, or if you have a bigger clinic, you can have a separate room for vaccines, and separate times obviously make a difference. And the vaccine times preferably should be in the morning so that no sick patient has come in by then. And once you've seen all these vaccination children, maybe have a small break. Or if you have ill children first, then after that, sanitize the clinic and call the vaccination children together. So things can be managed. If you talk to your pediatrician, both of you can discuss out a way, but please do not postpone your vaccine beyond a certain period of time. Like said, initially first 15 months, all these vaccines are important. Now you can delay by a month maximum, but then after that, you have to go and get the child vaccinated.
All right, Dr. Bhaskar Raju, that also leads me to another question, because if a parent is delaying vaccination and there comes a point, suppose when the peak is passed, people start stepping out, for example, here in Delhi and in many other parts of the country, what are the precautions that a parent should take in this pandemic when they're taking their child for the vaccination? Are there any precautions, any safety measures that they can adopt to make sure that the process of going and taking the vaccine becomes more safer?
Yeah, I think Dr. Wadhwa alluded to that, and there are certain standard operating procedures we follow. The parent ideally should come in a car, ideally in a closed car with an air conditioner so that the outside air does not come in. Of course, all the adults in the car must wear masks. Children above 1 or 2 years should wear a mask. Infants, of course, we do not advise masks for below 1 year of age. And then once they come to the clinic, they have to sit in the car. One person can walk in and check if there are people waiting or not. If there are not, the rest of them can come. Just the mother or the father alone should bring the child into the clinic. Yes, as much as possible, older people like grandfathers and grandmothers should not accompany these children into any doctor's clinic for their own safety. If you have any questions to ask, finish the poke, go out, get into the car, call the doctor and talk to him and get all your doubts cleared. This way, you can see to it that you spend less than a minute and a half inside. The doctor will load the syringe and keep it ready. When the child walks in, he just confirms the logistics, he confirms the names and stuff like that, the vaccine that needs to be given, gives the poke, and the mother of the child can go out. It's really not any more risky than most other normal human endeavors we carry out during this lockdown period, including, like I said earlier, go to a grocery store. It's really not that risky. Unless there's a total lockdown, any other time, do feel free, do feel safe to go to the pediatrician's office. All pediatricians are taking all the basic care required to see to it. No patient who walks in goes home with anything other than the immunization, not any germs they don't want.
Absolutely. Dr. Wadhwa, coming to you and, taking this point forward, we're more than 1 year into this pandemic, into this ecosystem that we are all operating, the so-called wretched normal that we are all learning to deal with every day. The immunization drive across the country has got relatively, compared to many other countries across the world, a very good response, especially when it comes to children and newborn. In this last 1 year, how has the immunization and that drive really been affected? And what are the steps that we can take to make sure that the momentum that the country has in terms of newborn vaccination when it comes to polio or various other diseases that you and Dr. Raju have spoken about, that momentum continues to go on and it doesn't stop?
The drive will also depend on the area. In places like our cities and all, the drive has been really good, and people who did not come in the last lockdown did come up in July onwards, and they have taken their remaining vaccines. In fact, we also did a bit that whoever was missing the dose, we used to write their name down, make a register, and calling them later that you missed out this dose. But in certain areas, rural areas, semi-urban areas, they might have missed and nobody might have reminded them. So we need to have something like a catch-up camp or something which, we can say that whoever has missed out the vaccine in the previous months, we are doing a special drive and come this day or maybe have a week or so where all these children can be brought together and vaccinated together, because I'm sure lots of children would have missed and the parents by now would have happily forgotten that the vaccine was due and they haven't given it. So we in our cities would be planning differently, and there we would have the government or some other body to plan to do the catch-up vaccination.
Right. So in those areas, we need a special focus. Dr. Bhaskar Raju, coming to you, taking that same point from you, how is it that we can keep up momentum, not just in big cities like Delhi and Mumbai, where relatively the literacy standards are better, but also in other parts of the country, where many people might have just forgotten about vaccination to their newborns?
Yeah, there needs to be a campaign on the social media. Honestly, I hope just as there are naysayers, there are good Samaritans who will send messages in their group saying, if you have children at home, you have not vaccinated, you have delayed the vaccine, kindly catch it up before it becomes too late, before any kind of new epidemic hits us. We have enough with COVID. We don't want a measles epidemic. We don't want a polio epidemic. We don't want a diphtheria epidemic. I think one is social media, responsible social media like you, news media, which propagates the idea that vaccinations are very vital. At the earliest opportunity, get the catch-up. Then, of course, NGOs also have their role to play. They can conduct catch-up vaccination campaigns like Dr. Wadhwa alluded to. We have conducted a few ourselves. And the city, it's not a major problem because in the private sector, we have details of our patients, and when they miss the vaccines, we bombard them with phone calls and messages and make sure they come. It's in the government hospitals we find a major issue. The government hospitals is catered to the majority of the population in cities and towns and rural areas. Many vaccinations are missed. I think those are the places media has to emphasize on and coax these parents as soon as it is safe enough to go to the hospital and catch up on the vaccines.
All right. Dr. Wadhwa, coming to you, and this is yet another question that we've got from social media. Yes, please go ahead. You have a point to make.
The question I was saying, we can do possibly that we can have something, like school entry. Children who are going to school next year, we can ask them to bring their cards and check whether the vaccines have been complete or not. So at the school entry, we can tell them to get a certificate that all the vaccines are complete, because once they start going to school now, and if they develop a disease, they will spread into the school or into the community like wildfire. So we can also have a checkpoint at school entry that if the vaccines are not complete, get it done, and then only after that the school admission process will happen.
Right. So there's another question, and Dr. Wadhwa and Dr. Raju, both of you can come in on this one. One of our viewers is asking that they are relocating to another country, but they have kept their plans on hold due to the pandemic. The vaccines offered to my child in that country, will they be different from the ones given in India? Will that have an adverse impact? So how does one really streamline if a person is moving countries, they have a newborn? Will the vaccination process really be different? Dr. Raju, if you can go first, please.
It's when I say universal vaccination, it's like all these vaccines are virtually universal. What differs is probably the particular brand of the vaccine that is given. In some countries, a few vaccines may not be a part of the national immunization schedule. We may need to take it from the private sector, but the vaccines are not very different. The timing of the vaccine, a few vaccines might be a little different. In the US, for example, they give their doses at 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months immediately after birth, while we do it much earlier, 6 weeks and 10 weeks and 14 weeks. Similarly, meningococcal vaccine will be given at school when you're leaving school, entering college in the USA. Here it's even advocated at 9 months. There may be a few minor changes like that. There are a few countries in Europe, for example, which do not give hepatitis A, which do not give chicken pox, because they believe it's really not a fatal disease, it's really not that serious a disease. But these are available here in the private sector, can be taken. So shifting countries is being done all the time. And there are any number of thousands of children who have emigrated back into India and children from India going there. It goes on in a streamlined way. They don't have to have any worries regarding the vaccines, which may be given, may not be given. If you're going to UK and you don't take a hepatitis A vaccine, for example, whenever you visit India, do take the hepatitis A vaccine. These are minor things which can be sorted out without any difficulty.
All right. Dr. Wadhwa, we touched upon this, but I think that question is being reiterated once again. Are combination vaccines as effective as the vaccines taken individually? One of our viewers has an apprehension that doesn't the vaccine get mixed up or diluted? I mean, it's a common sense question, but our experts will be able to tell us more. Dr. Vadva, if you would like to tell us about this.
No, obviously they don't get mixed up. That's what I'm saying. It's not like mixing 6 different antigens into one vial and making a vaccine. So all these combination vaccines are studied in a way that if there should be no interference between the various antigens, and if there is interference, they would increase the amount of an antigen, like MMRV, measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. They found that the varicella was becoming a little more effective, so they added more to it. So extensive studies are done. It's not that 5-6 different antigens are added together into one. Otherwise, we would have very few vaccines. So they have to do extensively study that if all these combinations are made, they do not get mixed into each other and interfere with each other. So it's well studied. Don't worry. There is no problem. If a combination is made, it's accepted, and you don't have to think beyond this. Don't Google and think that something is wrong. Combination is any better.
Well, don't Google is something all my doctors have told me, that, if you have a question, come and ask us the question. Don't do your Google research and come to us. Dr. Bhaskar Raju, once again, this question is coming in, and I think we need to reiterate this. What is a combination vaccine? How does it work in a newborn body? And can you reiterate for our viewers that it's completely safe if somebody, a parent is administering or making sure that the newborn is administered with a combination vaccine?
Yeah, a vaccine. I mean, we have seen COVID vaccine being developed in several months' time, and Dr. Vadva mentioned that that's one of the reasons why people have issues with it. Please remember, to develop a vaccine, it takes anywhere between 10 to 15 years. By the time the concept begins in some research laboratory and they start working on it, by the time it reaches the shelf from which the doctor picks up and gives it to the child, it's between 10 to 20 years, which means phenomenal amount of money, time, and research goes into studying each of these vaccines. There are several steps, safety steps that are done. They are injected into small animals, injected into bigger animals. Then safety trials are done, phase 1 trials are done, phase 2 trials are done, phase 3 trials are done. And after it is released, post-marketing surveillance is done. So if a vaccine is available, it has gone through several steps of safety. It is true. Our question is very valid. When you mix up vaccines, don't they interact with each other? It is very, very, very possible. And that's one of the toughest things about manufacturing hexavalent or pentavalent vaccines, to make sure the individual vaccines do not react with each other. Individual vaccines do not bring down the efficacy of the other. Enormous amount of study has gone into all that. And the ones that are available in the market are the ones which have been proven on the ground that each individual vaccine works by itself. It doesn't interfere with other. The side effects, millions and millions of children have been studied for side effects of multiple dose vaccines compared to single dose vaccines. There's no difference. The same 5 to 10% get light fever, maybe 1 to 2% get a little bit of swelling, maybe occasionally a little vomiting, perhaps a little diarrhea. The numbers are not any different. A child just takes one single dose with one germ in it, reacts the same way if you give it 6 different germs. I said between 1 and 6, the difference is minuscule, absolutely doesn't exist, because that child is used to receiving trillions and trillions of germs into its system. That 1 and 6 makes no difference at all. The parents can be absolutely assured what is available on the shelf and sold here has gone through all the mandatory checks and post-marketing surveillance as well, to make sure it's very safe. It is not going to cause any more problem than individual vaccines.
So, Dr. Anubhava, I'm going to combine 2 questions that we have just got from our viewers. What precautions should be taken after a child has received the combination vaccine? Will there be more fever? And if a child has taken a separate vaccine already, can I change? So can you really alter the schedule if you want, or if you have entered into one schedule, should you just stick to that? But Dr. Vadva, if you can go first.
No, ideally, as we go by the principles of vaccinology, it's better that we do not change the schedule. Whatever schedule you've started, you should continue. But just in case by mistake or because of lack of availability or any other reason you change from brand to brand, or you change from a separate vaccine to separate vaccine into a combination, there should be no problem. There should not be any problem. You should not start repeating the schedule. It's not null and void. The previous doses are not null and void. It's always recommended that you continue with the same schedule. And then you asked, first question was, the what precautions you take. So it depends on the vaccine which you've taken. There are so many combination vaccines, like in MMR and MMRV, you normally will not get fever, but the fever might come after week 10 days. So you have to give fever medicine after week 10 days, not at the time of vaccination. And then you take a DPT polio, HIV, hepatitis B combination. There might be a little chance of fever around 15-20%. It lasts only for a day, and you have to give just paracetamol drops. If the child is very cranky, irritable, then also the drops may help, because it means probably the child is having body ache but no fever. So, and that's it. About all these new combination vaccines do not cause much irritability, fever, and it goes off within a day.
Dr. Bhaskar Raju, you want to come in on that point? Suppose a child has already got some combination vaccine doses, and the parent wants to change the entire, administration criteria for some reason. Is that a change a parent should really think about, or you should stick to the schedule
No, not
you have
really.
subscribed?
No, I think these are medical decisions, and these are ideally done by the patient's pediatrician, what vaccine to give. I think the patient himself deciding that this is the vaccine I'm going to give, this is the brand I'm going to give, is probably not the right way to approach it, because your pediatrician knows best. He will be able to tell you, if you are changing the schedule, as far as possible, avoid that. But if you have changed the schedule by delaying it, the pediatrician will help you catch up on the schedules. If changing a brand from one brand to another brand is not a wise thing to do, and I don't really see any reason why a parents might want to change the brand. It's entirely the decision of the pediatrician, who usually will not change brands unless a particular brand goes out of the market and it's not available. In which case, of course, another brand can be used. Majority of them, there is enough evidence that even if you change the brand, it will continue to work. It's not that you will have to start from the very beginning, but that is a pediatrician's decision. I would prefer not be a parent's decision.
So the doctor knows best, and always consult with your pediatrician. That decision should lie with your doctor, because they are taking care of the health of the newborn. Dr. Arun Wadhwa, coming to you, and this is in the larger interest of making sure that vaccination for newborns and across multiple age groups is taken in the right spirit. What is the sort of information which should be available to a parent when they go ahead and want to start the vaccination of a newborn? Are there books that they should study? Because random Googling is clearly something doctors advise against. How is it that a parent can become more and more aware about the vaccination process?
So why we all say random Googling is not good? Because, people don't read the authentic sites. So if you read an authentic site like the WHO, CDC, or NHS is the UK site, CDC the American site, and WHO is, of course, the universal site. So if you read those sites, then it's perfectly fine for us. But people go and read individual blogs, and these individual blogs are written by people who, I wouldn't say have no knowledge, but maybe half knowledge. So they would write something which has been their experience or what they think is right, and people get carried away because they also tend to think in that direction. So that's why we say no Googling. But if you have to read, definitely read, and read authentic sites. That's number one. And otherwise, if you have to have certain basic knowledge, most of us in our clinics, like in our clinic, when the patient enters as a newborn, we give them a small file folder which has the names of all the vaccines given, what are they given for, like 3-4 lines which you should know, and also the side effects which you expect. Minor fever, pain, swelling, whatever side effects you expect. So these folders do have 4-5 lines, the minimum what you should know, what you're doing, what are you giving it for, which I think every patient should read, the parents should read, and remember also buy this vaccine and which one, so that next time when that disease comes or somebody asks or in a discussion, they should not say that, oh, we don't know anything, that's a pediatrician who does everything, we have no knowledge at all. So that's also not right. So these small, we can't make a book, because book would be too expensive. Even pediatricians would not read the whole book. So a little few lines or one paragraph for each vaccine is good enough. And we should be giving what we call as patient vaccine information sheets. So these vaccine information leaflets are very good. And, each vaccine, one paragraph is hardly anything that you can easily read before you go for the vaccine.
All right. So don't do random Googling, but go for authentic verified sources. That's also something that doctors encourage, that you must read properly from authentic sources, and if you want to be educated about the vaccination process. Dr. Bhaskar Raju, this is one question I think you'd like to answer. Why should I have my child immunized if all other kids in the school are immunized? It's the chicken and the egg question. You want to take that, sir?
I know. I mean, it's a very odd question. All the children
Yes.
in the school will not be immunized unless each individual parent decides to immunize each individual child. And if every father and mother is going to decide other children are going to be immunized, why would I immunize my child? No, that means the entire school will not be immunized. And two, the concept that all children are immunized is utopian. I don't think any country exists anywhere in the world where 100% of the children are fully immunized against all diseases. That doesn't exist. That's almost impractical. It's very, very difficult to achieve. Most countries which have done excellently in vaccinology and in immunizations have reached levels like 80%, 85%, but not beyond that. So never assume that every single child in the school is immunized, which is why, like, for example, even now we have mini epidemics of chickenpox in many schools. In fact, I've had many children suffer from chickenpox close to their exam time, especially when they are taking their +2 or 10th exams just before that, because that's the season for chickenpox. So that situation doesn't exist where 100% of the children are immunized and your child will not get it. And many diseases are not from other children. Like if you take polio, for example, it's not like a child with polio infecting another child with polio. It's the waterborne infection. Hepatitis A, for example, is a waterborne infection. Whether any other child is immunized or people around you are immunized or not doesn't really matter when it comes to these diseases. So bottom line, do not think the rest of the public, rest of the population, rest of society is going to protect themselves for your child's sake. You have to join in with protecting the entire community and entire society against all these terrible diseases.
Absolutely. And if your child is not immunized, then all children are not immunized. That's not how you're going to think about it. Dr. Badma, there's one more question coming in, that can immunization cause a bad reaction to my child? There's another question about the fact that combination vaccine, do they help reduce the pain you get from the injection pricks? A lot of anxiety must, exist in the parents who get their newborn for vaccination. What is the way to get past this anxiety? Because we've been speaking about the adverse events that may happen, which are very rare other than a mild fever. But the anxiety that continues to persist in parents in the immunization process, what is the way to deal with it, sir?
So that's a very interesting question, because anxiety is sometimes a major issue, especially, everybody has a different personality. And so many times we've seen after a vaccine, the child doesn't cry as much as the mother cries. So
Yes.
we have to help them. We have to tell them that the child will cry. Tell them beforehand that it will pain a little bit. So don't panic. And, older children, we can give them some sort of cold vomitation or something. But a newborn or a child less than 1 year will definitely cry on a quick. And we can't help prevent that. So we can always sometimes help the parents, the father to take over. But what I would do is, any mother who cries or says, I'm too afraid to take the injection for the child, I insist that they do it, because by taking 3-4 times, they getting the child vaccinated on their lap or whatever, they become more confident. So I think leaving them and saying, okay, you can't handle, call the father, it's not right. I always insist the mother should do. I explain to them little pain, but it will be just a little bit, and also that this little pain is worth the pain which you avoid if the child gets any one of these 6 diseases. So because most of them haven't seen what is whooping cough, they haven't seen what is diphtheria, they don't know. So I have to tell them a little bit that imagine if the child develops a whooping cough, which is a 100-day cough, and I have a video also whooping cough on my phone, which we recorded here in my clinic only. And I tell them that, look, you're preventing such deadly diseases, and if he cries for a minute, don't worry. And after that, console them just for a minute, and after that, tell them that it will be over in a minute, and they'll be prevented against so many serious diseases. They all do it. But I think it's your personality, your own bringing up, your anxiety, your nature. There's so many things.
Absolutely. Dr. Bhaskar Raju, I think you should take this question. Do vaccines cause SIDS, multiple sclerosis, or any other serious problems?
No is my immediate answer. Do not really worry about serious adverse effects. Yes, serious adverse effects are generally reported. They are extremely, extremely rare. It's like 1 in a million or 1 in 100,000 doses, you may have a serious adverse effect. Not necessarily multiple sclerosis, there may be. But then this is so rare, it doesn't come into the calculation when we decide should we vaccinate this child or not. The benefits of vaccination far outweigh the possibility of a very, very, very serious reaction. These are all anecdotal reports occasionally seen in the medical literature, so rare that it is reported even if one single incident occurs. like what happened with COVID vaccine. There was thrombus in the cavernous sinus thrombosis. They are extremely rare events, which may happen. And please be assured, medical science has advanced to a point. If these reactions are there, they are picked up, they are noted, they are studied, and now they know why a particular adverse event occurs. Bottom line, they make an intelligent decision. Even though there are very, very, very rare adverse events possible with the vaccination, that shall not be the reason for not giving it, because getting the disease, the chances are much bigger, and even dying of the disease is much, much, much more likely than getting a very adverse reaction. So my advice to parents is, don't worry about that. That's a pediatrician's problem. He is the one who studies about very rare events and very rare adverse events and very rare serious events following vaccinations. And I can assure you, for the last 1976, I started practicing pediatrics. I've been around for more than 40 years, almost half a century. I personally have not seen a single serious adverse effect following vaccinations. And most of my colleagues haven't seen serious side effects. They've seen a few, which are not really serious or life-threatening, but serious life-threatening I have not seen. And I'm sure most pediatricians will agree with me. They have not seen it in their life.
That's very heartening, and that's very assurance. Yes, Dr. Wadhwa, you have a point to make.
I was saying this is a typical question people ask after Googling.
Don't Google, read from the verified authentic sources. And in that same spirit, Dr. Wadhwa, after, say, my child has been, undergoing immunization of various kinds, are there any serious concerns or any serious precautions that I need to take in terms of diet, atmosphere, ecosystem? How should I observe or tend more care to the child that I have already with me, which has been administered a vaccine dose? Are there any precautions, just general ones, that a parent should take?
No, they're not. Actually, continue life as normal. The child can have a bath, massage, except that, the same limb, you can avoid the massage for a day because it might become painful. Otherwise, normal eating. The child may eat slightly less for a day, but that's again normal. Otherwise, normal life can continue. There is no problem at all. But you must know that the fever may last for a day. If it lasts for more than 2-3 days, get back to your doctor. In MMR, like I told you, that the fever may come after 7-10 days. So don't panic. And if the fever comes immediately after that or 2 days after that, then again you get back to your doctor. So that's why I said you read a little bit why the vaccines are there, what are the little side effects, and you must know them. They should be aware of them. If anything happens beyond them, then you have to get back to your pediatrician.
All right, Dr. Arun Wadhwa, Dr. Bhaskar Raju, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. It has been an absolute delight to listen to you, and thank you for educating all of us about the very important vaccination and the immunization process. This is our special initiative to make sure that the right information goes out, and clearly vaccination is important, especially for children as they're growing up. It protects them against diseases. It allows them to develop unhindered. Vaccination cards are almost like an insurance scheme to make sure your child gets all the vaccinations on time. This helps protect them effectively, as well as the community they are part of. Consult your doctor, get your child a vaccination card today. That's it from us. Thank you for joining this special webinar on vaccination card, the passport to health. See you, and thank you so much for joining on this side.